Okay, then that'll work. Before we resume, I'd like to ask Mr. Richard Brown, who has worked for many years with Portland Police, to come to the mic and give us his words of wisdom here.
Thank you very much. I agree with most of the things the people before me have said. You're doing some hard work. But when I look out at the tables out here, the name tags are kind of strange to me, because I remember other names sitting at tables through the years having these same discussions. The reason we continue to have these discussions is because we always have them around crisis. We should be having these discussions when there is no crisis, because people are listening. When there's crisis, we're yelling at each other. We need to have respect for the people who are sitting at the table. Somebody talked about agendas. The agenda should be about the community. You know, I came to policing, community policing, under Richard Walker. During the gang problems, he called a meeting together in the house of one of the women in the community. He had his people there, the community people were there, and we were talking. We were talking about solving problems. People were at their wits' end. What do we do about these kids out here shooting each other? What do we do about this gang problem? What do we do about the conditions in the community? The same problems you all are talking about. For all you folks that like to throw that old word and mature word around, let me know. The only way you get there is you keep breathing. So you'll be there. I hope you're not sitting around tables having this discussion, because I'm getting tired of it. And the reason that this room isn't full of people from the community is they're tired of it. They realize that we're playing games. We're trying to appease a community that's angry because there are issues. And when we get quiet, they get quiet, and we don't come together again until there's another problem. We need to work hard to solve these problems, and we need to institutionalize the answers. That's why we continue to have these problems, because we talk about solutions and we don't do anything about them. So for all you young folks, hang around, keep having these discussions, keep holding people's feet to the fire. But remember, all you gotta do is keep breathing, and your hair will look like mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Yes.
Just to say thank you very much to dear friend Richard Brown. Our paths go back some 40 years in this community, and Richard was involved with the Chiefs Forum. He was a member of the Chiefs Forum under Tom Potter, or with Tom Potter. He was a part of the First Citizens Police Academy. He was a part of the Community Rescue Plan, founding the Community Rescue Plan, the three pieces of community policing that I talked about earlier. I also had the privilege as a legislator of nominating Richard to serve on the statewide Department of Public Safety Standards and Training. And he completed 2 terms. I tried to make it 8 years. He told me it was 6, corrected me. Bud said it must have felt like 8. But I point that out because Richard has so much to share when it comes to training and how we are going to advance the training agenda of the Portland Police Bureau. We should seek his guidance and seek his counsel. And not to do that would be a terrible oversight. So I just want to put that on the record, and I want to thank Richard again for his presence and for his wisdom and for his friendship over many, many years. Thank you.
Yeah, you can seek him. Now, the problem is, can you find him? Okay, I think we're going to return to the presentations from the Portland Police Bureau and then some discussion. And the last agenda item is subcommittee reports. So I would like to stop all of the discussion by probably about 8:15, since we close at 8:30. Okay, so who's next? But I want your discussion to stop in about 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, we'll try. Okay. So you heard Mr. Brown talk about the gang violence, and that's kind of a segue into our next speaker, which is Sergeant Tina Jones, who's a supervisor in our gang enforcement team. A lot of people have come to us with questions of what we're doing to address this epidemic level of gang violence that the city of Portland's facing. I want to throw a couple statistics out at you. Our all-time high when we have been since 2001, 2002, when we tracked our gang violence, our shootings in the city, our all-time high was 118 gang-related shootings in 2012. We are currently, as of today, at 171 gang shootings in this city. And it's just absolutely unacceptable. And so the Police Bureau is actively working with community partners and outreach and trying to do the best job, again, that we can with many people who have stepped up and given of their expertise and their time to assist us. So with that, I want Sergeant Jones to come up here and talk to you a little bit about some of the programs and the engagement pieces that her team's involved in.
Thank you for having me. Like Commander Uehara said, I'm Tina Jones. I'm a sergeant with our afternoon gang enforcement team, otherwise referred to as GET. I want to give a really quick snapshot overview of what our gang team is. And then I've been asked to talk about some of the partnerships and commitments that we have with the community. This is not a full-scale overview of everything that we do. That would take a lot more time than the 5 to 7 minutes I have tonight. So we currently have 5 sergeants, 6 detectives, and 26 officers who are committed to working on gang-related investigations. And the majority of those are Measure 11 cases. So we're talking about gang-related shootings, attempt homicide cases, stabbings, serious assaults with weapons, all of those things. And like the commander mentioned, we've had over 170 instances this year of Measure 11 gang-related cases. And whenever I kind of throw that number out there, I think it's really, really important to share a little bit about, we're not talking about, just maybe one person shooting at one person and it doesn't impact anybody else. This is rippling throughout our community. It's impacting people from all backgrounds, all races, all ages. I've seen cars that have been shot up with 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds in the back seat, and something stopped the bullets from going through. I don't know how we didn't have homicides of little babies that have, nothing to do with what's going on out there. It's horrific. It's not pretty, and it's an epidemic that we have to stop and take ownership of. And when I say we, I mean we, the community, and it takes all of us. We can't do it by ourselves. It takes all of that. And hopefully today I can share some opportunities for folks to get involved and engaged. We have 2 shifts. We have a day shift GET team. That's primarily our detectives and some officers who follow up on those Measure 11 cases. They do surveillance, follow-up, search warrants, and they make arrests. So those are the ones that you'll see on the news where folks are being held accountable whenever possible for these shootings and deaths. We also have an afternoon shift that's where I'm assigned. And we go out and we patrol the city. We respond to incidents, but we also do proactive work. And a lot of the work that we do isn't putting people in handcuffs and taking them to jail. it's having interactions with youth, it's having interactions with adults in the community, because we need relationships to be able to solve this problem and to also help direct our youth down a path that's not going to further the violence. We have the opportunity in that capacity to get firearms off the street. And so far this year, between both of our shifts through warrants and arrests and traffic stops and those sorts of things, we've seized 177 firearms. And I'm sorry to say that's probably a drop in the bucket for what's out there. But every single time our officers have an encounter with somebody who has a firearm, especially people who are already out there shooting at each other, it's a very, very potentially volatile situation. And my officers are experts at being able to diffuse situations and safely get these firearms off the street without ever, in any of these instances that I'm talking about, having to shoot anybody. And in the vast majority of those cases, there isn't any force used at all. And I think that's a testament to the excellent police work that they're doing and their ability to connect as a human being with people who are even in the gang world. We have a number of partnerships which are critical to the mission that we are trying to achieve. We have monthly regional law enforcement meetings where we connect with a whole host of agencies, including Vancouver, Multnomah County jail staff, Washington County, Gresham, MGET, Transit Police, and others, because we recognize that if we're not sharing information, we're not being as effective as we could be. And those are very informative and helpful meetings. We also have bi-monthly collaborations with our street level gang outreach folks through the Office of Youth Violence Prevention. And so we meet every payday Thursday meetings, we call them, every Thursday where we get paid. We connect with them, we share information about recent incidents, trends that we're seeing, and we get to share back and forth about things, that we have kind of on the horizon that we know that could be problematic, or trends that we're seeing. And we can also build the relationships with the street level gang outreach folks. We also have the ability to have contact with them. The sergeants are on a cell phone group with them so that we can communicate throughout our shift as well. We have monthly meetings with parole and probation and the district attorney's office on the juvenile side, and talk about our most at-risk youth who are already in the system, and how we can try to keep them from, perpetuating the violence, how to get them into more positive activities. And if they are in fact out there, doing the shootings or the serious assaults, how to try to safely apprehend them and hold them accountable so that we're not furthering this damage in our community. There's one program I've been asked to talk about, which is the GIFT program. That's the Gang Impacted Family Team. And that's a partnership between the Portland Police Bureau and Portland Opportunities Industrialization Center, POIC, I think that was mentioned earlier, and the District Attorney's Office. The coordinator is the lieutenant of the gang team, Mike Krantz, and they take referrals from all different partners within Portland Police and outside to help people who are impacted by gang violence. And I mean, that can be gang members, former gang members, families, or children, for example. And these folks are contacted and connected with a variety of resources within our community. So what that could look like is mentoring, job placement, housing, counseling, drug or alcohol treatment, GED or college scholarship opportunities, and even family counseling. And, I think that is such a tremendous program because it recognizes that the gang violence that's occurring goes beyond just maybe, certain individuals. It impacts whole families and communities. And the goal is to try and increase the successful life choices and reduce the gang impact on families as a whole. We also have a youth referral program that we can refer youth to the Office of Youth Violence Prevention, and they can get them connected to mentors and resources that are out there. And just to throw out a number, we had over 40 referrals from our team this year, and it's so nice. I think for us, I've referred a couple of youth myself, to have other partners besides law enforcement, because while I'm a human being and I care greatly about this community and the people, sometimes the blue suit does, present a barrier that even I can't overcome no matter how hard I try. And sometimes, youth, they need mentors who are either closer to their age or understand their personal background at a level that I can't personally provide. And so it's so nice to have the ability to refer youth to other folks in our community who care a great deal and are trying to make a positive impact. And then we also have the Community Peace Collaborative, and I recognize some faces in the room who've been, I think, long-standing members or participants of this really important group. It's an open invitation bi-monthly meeting, and it's hosted at North Precinct. It's comprised of community members, people from our faith communities, non-governmental and governmental partners, law enforcement, and I mean, anybody's invited. And I know I actually gave my card to RJ because I have been to some of the meetings, and I feel like the same as what RJ was saying here. We have to include our youth in these conversations, because we can't make assumptions about what they need unless we're asking them what they need, or else we're going to fail. And that's a good forum for us, I think, too, to bring them to the table and get them involved, because we need more positive leaders like RJ to help us solve this problem, because we can't do it without them. This kind of group, I know it's had other names in the past, but it's been meeting for over 10 years. And I appreciate, is it Mr. Brown, what you said about the conversations that go on for years and years. And I have that exact same frustration with us only coming to the table when there's crisis, because we miss all that time in between. And it's really difficult to build relationships, enduring, lasting, real relationships, unless you're doing it in a time that's not in crisis. So I just want to thank you for sharing that, because I wholeheartedly feel the same way. We are in a crisis, in my opinion, with what's going on in our community with our gang issue, but I feel some hope, a lot of hope, because I know a lot of these conversations and relationships have been going on for years before I've been at the table from the gang team. And I know that we can make an impact because we've been working at that, even when it hasn't been crisis. And then finally, we have our community engagement. I've been in law enforcement for over 15 years, and I've had all kinds of different assignments. And out of everything I've done, the most impactful things that I've done have been engaging with youth in our community. We have some really good kids and families, and unless we're out there engaging with them in positive ways, they don't get to know that not all police are bad. They may only see us when it's, a knock on the door because we got a call. And having had the opportunity to, work under some leadership at North Precinct, where I was able to go out and do a series of community engagement projects and have activities that were positive, and where kids could ask any questions they wanted, or just get to know us as human beings, and vice versa, us to get to understand kind of the mindset of the kids who are living in sometimes, violent situations or areas where it feels very unsafe for them, and to give them that voice. It's impactful. I wish that we could do more. I know there's always this push-pull with resources available and time and all that, but it's hugely important work. And I know some people think, we're here trying to say how great we are, and I think we're trying to highlight some of the work that we've been doing for a long time that maybe we haven't talked about so much, and also the hard work ahead and the support that we need and from everybody. And we've got issues to overcome, and absolutely. So I just thank everybody for letting us have this conversation, and thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time, because I still would like to have some time for the COAB to ask questions or to make observations. We have about maybe 5 minutes for the last presentation. I'm sorry, but this is...
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lieutenant Rick DeLand. I've been with the Portland Police Bureau for 25 years. I was promoted to lieutenant in April, and prior to that, I was a sergeant assigned to Central Precinct, and I was the supervisor of the Central Precinct Foot Patrol. One of the things I don't do when I speak publicly about this project, and I'll talk about that word here in a minute, is I don't prepare what I'm going to talk about, because I'm glad I went last. I wish I had more time, but I like to tailor my talk around what's important to my audience and what's being talked about in the meeting beforehand. And so I made some notes while I was listening to the comments earlier and the questions earlier, and I wanted to talk a little bit about those things that are related to the reason that I'm here, in the sense that what we tried to do with the Foot Patrol was police work the way that it should be done. And that leads us back to all of the questions and comments that were made earlier today. So I'm going to tell a story. And one of the questions that got asked and one of the issues that got raised is, when we talk about community policing, what is community policing? And so I'm going to give a little story about my history. So I went to Portland State University. I was a philosophy major there. Started pre-med, but decided I didn't want to go to school for 8 years. Didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was interested in the philosophy elective classes I was taking, and so that was my major. No future in that, but hey, learned a lot. But I started to take law enforcement elective classes, and one of those classes was taught by a Portland Police Bureau lieutenant named Charles Moose. And that was in 1989. And in 1989, the Portland City Council passed a resolution declaring community policing the official style of policing in the city of Portland. And Lieutenant Moose was in charge of the first 2 community policing projects in Portland, Columbia Villa and Iris Court. So I'm taking this class, and it was a night class, and most of the people in the class weren't very engaged. And if you know Lieutenant Moose, you know that he's not very patient with things like that. And so he and I often engaged in pretty heated discussion and debate about policing in general. Now, I'm 20 years old at the time. I have my own opinions about the world, and I don't have any law enforcement experience. But the class itself was primarily about and built around this new thing called community policing in Portland, and he spent a lot of time talking about these 2 projects that he was in charge of. And so he throws out kind of the pop quiz one night and says, okay, who can tell me what community policing is? And there's silence in the room. And he says, okay, let me tell you. And I can't quote him exactly because it's been 25 years, but he basically said, community policing is bringing non-traditional resources to bear in partnership with the police to solve an identified community problem that has been a chronic problem and previously unsolvable. Paraphrased. And being the brash 20-year-old I was, I slammed my fist down on my desk and I said, you're wrong. He goes, what are you talking about? And I said, community policing is about how your officers interact with the community in every single contact that they make. What you just described is a community policing tool. And what community policing should be about is the relationship that officers forge with the community, not just as part of a project or part of something special that we're going to do, but every single time we interact with the community, that moment is the most important moment. And each officer has to see the importance of that, because it might be the only time that they ever have contact with the police, and the impression that you leave is the impression that they walk away with. The City of Portland contracted a community survey several years back that had some pretty interesting results, and it was about what is your opinion of the Portland Police Bureau. And the results were split between people who identified as I've never had contact with the Portland police and a group where I have had contact with the Portland police. And that could be whether you were arrested or got a ticket written or you were the victim of a crime or they stop in for coffee at your coffee shop or whatever. Two distinct groups. The group that had never met any of us rated us significantly lower than the group that had contact with us, that had been arrested by us, or that had citations written by us. And what that told me was that where we missed the boat is that we need to make sure, going back 25 years in that argument, that the community knows who we are. That when we show up as anonymous blue suits in the middle of a crisis and expect you to trust us, that's an unreasonable expectation. And so getting back to our project and what we did with the foot patrol unit, the reason that we built it around a foot patrol is because it gets you out of the car, because it creates casual contact as you walk down the sidewalk with people, and it has nothing to do with anything going wrong or anybody doing anything wrong. It puts you right there face to face with your community and sparks conversations that are just about life, or about what's going on in the neighborhood, or about what's bothering them that day. More importantly, they get to know you as a person. And so we had some things that we dialed into it to elevate that effort. We used first names only. I wasn't Sergeant DeLand at the time, I was Rick. And every member of my team, the community got to know us on a first name basis. I was kind of famous for walking around with a cup of coffee in my hand, and I did that because it lowered the appearance that I was out there running around the neighborhood looking for somebody to bust. I was just out for a walk with my cup of coffee saying hi to people. Officers traditionally, especially in an enforcement mode, don't shake hands. There's reasons for that we won't get into, but we wanted to break that down. And so I encouraged officers to shake hands or knuckle bump, and I can tell you by the end of the year, it graduated into hugs. But again, it's taking responsibility for the impact of how we do our job and how it breaks social norms. So when somebody comes up and wants to meet you and you don't shake their hand, you're breaking a pretty significant social norm, and you're creating in that moment a barrier. I was worried about the barrier of the uniform itself, and I can tell you that it was my experience and the experience of my officers that it just wasn't. That what the barrier was intentional or unintentional demeanor. And as soon as we took ownership of that and presented ourselves in a different way, then people felt like they could talk to us and got to know us. And we were open in sharing our life stories and the things that we cared about, and we listened to them. And we did that with everybody. So the motivation originally to do this was community complaints about so-called livability issues created by the homeless youth community that we refer to, or they refer to themselves as summer travelers. And if you've been in downtown Portland, or if you've been a couple of years ago out on Hawthorne, or you've been in different neighborhoods in the city, you see, groups of young kids experiencing homelessness, often with their dogs, and they intimidate people. Real quick. In the past, we had tried to deal with that issue by doing what law enforcement tends to do. What are the community's complaining about it? They've identified a problem. What are our tools? And so you look at what laws are being violated. Okay, so we're going to go out and we're going to enforce those laws that are being violated. And we did it by the hundreds and the thousands over the years. And by 2013, the community was telling us that 2013 was the worst summer they had ever had, writing thousands of citations for low-level livability issues. We went out and focused on not only the livability of the other community, but on their livability, getting to know them, building trust with them, getting help for them, partnering with Janus Youth and the Homeless Youth Continuum, and getting them the services that they needed, building their trust so that they would talk to us. And all of 2014, we wrote 21 citations. And when we surveyed the community, they came back and said it's been the best summer that we've ever had, with very low level of enforcement and focused entirely on building relationships with everybody who works, lives, and plays in the neighborhoods where we were working.
Okay, I gotta cut you off. I gotta have some input from the COAB. Thank you very much for your presentation. questions, observations, recommendations from the members of the COAB? Bud?
So it seems like one of the things we're hearing here is that in other places where we've had gang violence issues, whether we're talking about Compton or whether we're talking about Watts or some other place, we seem to see in history that the solution doesn't come from the police. It comes from the community and often from those gangs themselves when they decide that it's time to reconcile. So my question would be, and I didn't hear anything about this, maybe I wasn't listening well, so tell me if I'm wrong. I didn't hear anything about how we would catalyze those gangs to reconcile and stop the violence, because I don't think it's something we can do to them. It's something we have to do with them.
Any response to that?
Is that a question then, I guess? I didn't know if it was
Yeah.
a statement or.
It's a question.
Yeah.
So I only touched on a few.
Would you stand up, please? And
I only touched on a few of the different projects or programs that are going on.
Thank you.
So I only touched on a few of the different projects or programs that are going on. I know that the Office of Youth Violence Prevention and with street level gang outreach, there are a lot of efforts being made to try and reduce the violence by helping people to provide them skills to deal with conflict in a different manner, you know, rather than just resort to guns and knives, because that's primarily what we're seeing. But I agree with you that there have to be, you know, other mechanisms beyond law enforcement, and, you know, I only touched on a couple of the different ones that are going on now.
thank you. Tom?
I was interested in Lieutenant Dealin's discussion and observations and apparently evidence of a non-enforcement model producing, sounds like, very good results for the community. And so when I hear that, and then I look at the statistics of traffic stops that are kept by the city, and I look back at the most recent stop data that was prepared by the Bureau, where the gang enforcement team was stopping on a racial basis 37% African Americans compared to the population of 6%, searching them more and finding less contraband than on white drivers that they were stopping. And the violence isn't better. It seems like either it's bias that's causing those stops, or some practice or some attempt by the gang enforcement team to enforce the law that doesn't seem to be working. I mean, one, you're not finding the contraband that you're stopping people for, and two, it's not improving, you know, or curtailing the violence. So I just posit that as a suggestion that whatever is motivating the gang enforcement team and other teams of that sort to stop in that disparate manner, it's not working. And it disenfranchises and upsets, you know, communities of color. And so I just would urge you to think about that, particularly with what Lieutenant Dealin describes as a non-enforcement method, apparently being much more productive.
Can I speak to that a little bit?
So one of the things that we had in common with the challenges faced by gang enforcement teams historically, going all the way back to the 80s when they first started getting formed in this country in response to the rising gang problem, is that gang enforcement officers, through the work that they do, learn who the players are. They know who it is that they're interacting with. And one of the things that we have continually need to challenge ourselves at, Vice President spoke to this when I was at the White House, is that what the community is concerned about is how we're going to treat, for example, your kid. And that's your concern. You want us to get the kid with the Glock. What you're worried is that we're going to treat your kid like the kid with the Glock. And the way that we solve that problem is by knowing who's who. And we do that by being in the community and getting to know people. So as it relates to what we did with the homeless youth community was we got to know everybody. And when we identified the predators and exploiters, the ones that were turning young female runaways into prostitutes, the ones that were playing darts with hypodermic needles on passed out people in the middle of the night, that were exercising street justice and stabbing people and beating people, when we identified who those people were, we enforced the heck out of them, right? But what had happened prior to that is we treat this entire group of people as a community. We all got to own it. I get the calls. Business owners saying, I got homeless people out in front of my store. I want you to do something about it. We all need to own that. What we did was we brought a scalpel to that problem, identified who the true criminals were within that group, and we enforced on them. And we helped everybody else. And we have a similar issue in gang-impacted communities, and that's what GET does. They did, and I don't mean this to be insulting, but here's the reality of the situation. And I modeled a lot of what we did around the earliest gang teams, and they made an effort to be engaged in the community to the extent that, I mean, they're going to churches and they're going to schools and they're getting to know people and they're building relationships with kids. And what started to happen in the mid-90s is the people that were doing that with the police got killed, right? And so we have to adjust that and how they work and find the balance on how do you be engaged with the community without getting people killed. And so this wasn't about non-enforcement, it was about appropriate enforcement. It was about enforcement as a specific tool, not just as our only tool, or because out of frustration sometimes we would default to getting back to issues of livability crimes. What else can we do? It's not a police problem. We can't arrest ourselves out of this problem. It's a community problem that we're the ones asked to go out there every day and engage with it. And so we bring the toolbox we have, and there's violations occurring, and so we're going to do what cops do. We looked for a different way. But when it came to the people that were actually affecting the safety in the community, that was our non-negotiable item. When it's about safety, then we're in full law enforcement mode. Everything else we can work with over time. So, thank you.
Thank you. Jakari, and then Abel.
I just wanted to say on multiple gang shootings that I've been present at, Sergeant Jones, all those gang enforcement officers, it's not just about responding, and those officers are amazing. They know these kids, they know their families, they can talk to them, and I know with beyond reasonable doubt that there would be way more shootings than they'd have now if they weren't out there just talking to them just in a mere conversation basis, where they're talking to those kids and asking them, what are they doing out? You ain't supposed to be out here, and being able to talk to them on that level. And a lot of those kids, they have a lot of respect for them because they get that mutual respect. And to be able to get 170 guns off of gangsters without having any shootings, that's not luck. That's not. It really isn't. Those officers are so talented, and they really do care about their work and the safety of those kids because they know their kids, and they do talk to them about, hey, you can't do this if you want to go to school. I'm not trying to take up a lot of time, but there is a lot of work being done with not a lot of resources, and their hearts are in it.
Thank you. Before you speak, Abel, for all of you who have been contemplating giving a subcommittee report this evening, you may relax. I'm going to just use the chair's power to extend this conversation, which seems to me we can do the subcommittee reports in another way, and I'll be in contact with you on how to do that. Abel.
Thank you. Lieutenant, is it Deland or DeLand? If you don't mind coming back up to the mic. You answered my earlier question. The question was, what is community policing? Mm-hmm. The other part of the question, and I'd like for Richard Brown to be prepared to also answer this question, where and how is the subject of community policing as a philosophy, as the philosophy of the Portland Police Bureau. Where and how is that introduced in the training? Who does that training? How many more officers are there out there like you?
There are a lot of them.
Okay. So talk to me about the training part of it.
So to become an officer in the Portland Police Bureau, you have to go through a testing process. And I can tell you, having sat on the panels when we test candidates at the very beginning of the process, if you don't have an idea what community policing is, you're not going to make it through the panel. And so it's something that's, I mean, our official title under the City of Portland is Community Policing Officer. And so it is woven into the fabric of who we are. And in finishing my story earlier with Lieutenant Moose, later Chief of Police Moose, because I left out kind of the important end of the story, it wasn't meant to insult his position at all. It demonstrated a debate that I think continues to this day, right? And what he did with that is the following week he came in and he slapped an application on my desk and he double dog dared me to apply. And I later worked for him at North Precinct. What I believe, what we did as a team with the unit that I worked with in Central Precinct is no different than what individual officers have done in this police bureau long before I was born. Certainly were doing it when I was hired, have done it throughout my career. Mark Zalawi being an obvious example of one, but I could give you 100 others. We were effective in what we did because we were able to concentrate it and really push it as a fundamental philosophy, as a foundation for a problem that we hadn't had any luck in kind of tackling before. The challenge is that it is on an individual basis. It is spread out. And I haven't always, even though I came in believing this, I haven't always worked this way. I've tried. I've been here 25 years. And I can tell you that one of the psychological dynamics that happens over the course of your career, as the trauma sets in and the frustration sets in, and you look at unbearable call loads that we deal with as staffing has been cut, it is easier to do this job one call at a time. It just is. Our challenge as an organization is to continue to push the relationship building as a top priority, because it is easy to start to slip back to taking one call at a time. That's on us as the leadership in this bureau to do that. The equal challenge is we are in a staffing crisis. That what went along with the City Council resolution in 1999 was an operation called Operation Jumpstart, which was the hiring of over 200 officers, and I was one of them. Because the City Council recognized that we needed more police officers to give them the time to do this work. That time has been taken away over the course of my career. My unit last year was given time, and we showed what we could do with the time. North Precinct's project at Albina, they were given the time and they showed what they could do with the time. That's the challenge for the city moving forward.
Thank you. I appreciate your response. And Mr.
Hold on
Brown?
just a second. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's 8:27.
Oh,
At 8:30, this meeting concludes, unless there is a motion to extend the meeting.
I move that the meeting be extended an additional 15 minutes.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to add 15 minutes to this evening's meeting. All in favor, raise your paddles, please. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All opposed, please raise your paddles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Abstentions? We have a tie. Huh? Pardon me? Yes.
In all fairness, we should work to be as timely as we can and
I
to
agree.
and to end at 8:30. And then if people want to stay and mingle afterwards, that should be a free choice. But let's respect time and end at 8:30.
Okay. V?
I just wanted to make, did you get my, woo? I just wanted to make a quick point, since we can't make accountability subcommittee points.
You're
I just
out of
wanna
order.
make a quick
You're out of
point
order, V.
that
You're out of
I've
order,
got
V.
18 community organizations
V, you are out of
represented
order.
at
V, you are out of order. Please relinquish your mic.
Thank you, dear.
Laquita.
Hello.
The motion, I'm going to, there was a motion on the floor. There was a tie. It's not a major decision. It's a minor one. I could break it. I'm gonna agree with Alicia. Let's stop the meeting at 8:30, and people who want to stay for more are able to do that. Now, Tom,
I don't think V was out of order. You should let her speak.
I am the chair. She was out of order.
No, we need
I mean,
Hello?
and there is an insult to process going on here where people are involved and they want to go home and they've been working, and we were about to be taken off topic, and the chair decided we should not be taken off topic. We are now back on topic. It is now 8:29. And it seems to me that this is a time to adjourn this meeting.
Yes.
Can I get a motion for adjournment, please? Can I get a second? All in favor of adjourning this meeting, please? All opposed? Abstentions? The meeting is adjourned, and those who would like to stay may.